Welcome to the Survivor to Thriver show with your happiness expert, Samia Bano. Are you a survivor of abuse or other trauma? Are you tired of feeling stuck, silent, and stressed all the time? This is the podcast people from all over the world join in to learn exactly how to stop suffering and start living with more inner peace and joy. Are you ready to eliminate suffering from your life and transform from a survivor to thriver? Then congratulations, you are in the right place. Let's get started. Hey, welcome to episode 3 of the Survivor to Thriver show. So glad to have you back. We're going to pick up right where we left off last time, talking about the sense of loss, of trust that I experienced in the aftermath of the abuse, the child sexual abuse that I went through. I lost trust in myself, lost trust in my relationships. And although I didn't know it at that time, this is in fact a very common experience among survivors of all kinds of abuse and sometimes other kinds of trauma as well, that your sense of trust can be severely shaken. And this is huge. It's hugely hurtful because any healthy relationship has to be based and grounded in a foundation of trust. And so when you lose your sense of trust, invariably the relationships in your life become unhealthy, including your relationship with your own self. And this was certainly true in my case, and it showed up in my life in terms of how my relationship became unhealthy with myself. Because I was going through this phase where I was in my trying to stay in this place of denial and try to forget about what had happened and act as if nothing had happened, I actually disconnected myself from a part of my own mind and my own heart. The part of myself that was in fact the part that was exposed to the light of truth and guidance, and that could have led me on the path of healing and recovery, right? But I was so scared, I was so consumed by my fear and my not knowing how to deal with the fear and how to manage the chaos that had begun to really consume me, and I to be and here's the thing, that I couldn't let that continue. I couldn't let that intense turmoil, emotional turmoil continue, because I just couldn't handle it. So I had to do something. And in the absence of knowing how to manage it and heal it, the best I could do was to deny it, to try and ignore it and move on. So looking back at what I was experiencing, I know that I was doing the best I could. I made the best decisions I could at that time. So now I do not blame myself or judge myself in any way. However, at that time, I was locked into a battle with myself. And sometimes you'll notice that I will slip into when I'm talking about my experience, I'll start to speak in the third person, or like in the plural of like, we did this, we did that. And where does that come from? It comes from this experience that I had of multiple selves, right? There's different parts of me fighting with each other. The really scared part of me, right, that wanted to just stay behind those walls that it had erected and stay silent and keep everyone out. And then the wiser part of me, that knew that something had to change, that we could not deal with this challenge alone, that we could not heal and overcome this trauma on our own, that we needed to let the walls down, let the guards down, get help and support. There was like literally a battle going on, and there was a battle for survival that was going on within me. And as this battle raged on within me, of course, it made for an unhealthy relationship for me with myself, right? Because there's a lot of blaming and judging and shame and guilt and anger going on back and forth between the different parts of me. But it also made for unhealthy relationships and spilled over into my relationships with others. Now, because I couldn't always control my interactions, how my interactions went with the adults around me, for example, especially in my culture, growing up in India, Pakistan, and especially as a girl, I was taught that the proper way to be was to be obedient to my elders, to listen to them, to never refuse anything that they asked of me. And so, for example, if an adult wanted to come and hug me or kiss me, I was not supposed to say no to that. Or if I did, I was considered rude and bad and reprimanded. So, and actually for a while, I tried to refuse and resist, but it created more drama, more turmoil in my life. And it was just getting too much. I couldn't deal with it. I couldn't take on that extra pressure, that extra turmoil, that extra drama. So I was like, okay, all right, the way I'm going to deal with it is just become silent again, go behind my wall, just let people do what they wanted on the outside, but internally I'd be screaming and shouting and resisting and arguing and whatever. So that was what was going on with the adults. But there were a few people in my life with whom I felt a greater sense of freedom to express my anger or to express my resistance or to refuse them access to me. For example, my little sister. My little sister was one of the very few people in my life that I could be in a position of power over her. I could be the dominant presence among the two of us. And so I started becoming very controlling of all of our interactions. So, for example, I refused to let her touch me. My little sister, is a loving heart. Loved to hug and kiss and hold hands, in an expression of her love. But I refused to let her touch me. I refused to let her hug me or kiss me. I even began to refuse to let her touch any of my things. I wouldn't let her play with my toys, to borrow my books. And that was my way of exercising some kind of control in my life, because I felt there was so much that was going on within me and around me that was outside of my control. And that lack of control was very crazy making, so to speak. And again, this is a very common experience that survivors of abuse and even other kinds of trauma can have. This feeling of lack of control, and therefore then starting to engage in different kinds of behaviors that are meant to help us achieve greater control in our lives. So how can you apply this knowing in your life? Well, first of all, if you are a survivor of abuse or some other trauma in your life, or know somebody who is, and you find yourself or your loved one engaging in compulsive behaviors, know that what you're going through, what you're experiencing, is a very natural and normal reaction to what you have experienced. There's nothing wrong with you for feeling this way. You're not going crazy, okay? And it's so, so important to know that. And look, just because I say that to you once, why should you believe me? Why should your heart and mind believe me, right? So it's not enough that you hear it once, or you tell yourself, give yourself this message once. You have to, we have to remind ourselves of this again and again and again and again. And that's really one of the first steps that you can take towards helping yourself deal with that internal struggle and the fighting and the blaming and the judging voice, whether it's your own or whether it's coming from the people around you. You know what? There's nothing wrong with you for the way you're feeling. It's a perfectly natural, normal reaction, given what you have experienced. Now, that is not to say that this is how it has to be forever, or that you cannot change it. But this is the accepting of this is the first step that can help you get on the path to healing. All right. So do this for yourself. Do this for your loved ones. Stop the fighting and the blaming and the judging. Instead, come from this place of empathy and compassion and validate their experience, validate your own experience, and allow yourself to just be. And in next episode, in the next episodes of the show, we will start talking about the next steps and the next steps and the next steps you can continue to take on this journey, so you can stop suffering and start living with more inner peace and joy. And meanwhile, if you have any questions or comments, please feel free to connect with me through my website, which is www.academyofthriving.com. All right, so I'll see you next time.